The salvage probe drifted silently through the debris field, its sensors scanning the twisted remains of what had once been a massive vessel. Captain Nexus watched the readings from his command chair aboard the harvester, his 6 eyes tracking multiple data streams simultaneously. The Keth'ari were natural scavengers, their civilization built on repurposing the remnants of extinct civilizations that littered the galaxy like cosmic graveyards. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Captain? Called out Navigator Prism, her crystalline voice cutting through the bridge's ambient hum. The probe has detected something unusual in the wreckage Sector 7. Nexus leaned forward, his elongated frame casting shadows across the holographic displays. The Keth'ari had ruled this sector of space for over 3 centuries, ever since they had absorbed the territories of the fallen Terran Coalition. According to the historical archives, humans had been a short-lived species that had mysteriously vanished from the galaxy roughly 400 years ago. Most scholars believed they had simply destroyed themselves through warfare or environmental collapse, as so many primitive species did. "Define unusual," Nexus commanded, his mandibles clicking with curiosity. "It appears to be a preservation chamber of some kind, Captain. Still powered, still functional. The energy signature matches old Terran technology, but the readings are strange." The probe's camera feed materialized before them, showing a cylindrical object roughly 3 meters long, embedded deep within what appeared to be the ship's former medical bay. Unlike the rest of the wreckage, which had been twisted and scorched by whatever catastrophe had befallen the vessel, this chamber remained pristine. Soft blue lights pulsed along its surface in a steady rhythm, and frost covered the transparent viewing panel at its head. "How long has this wreckage been drifting?" Nexus asked. Science Officer Quantum consulted his instruments. "Based on the stellar drift patterns and radioactive decay, approximately 412 years, Captain. This would place its destruction during the final period of human activity in this region." Nexus felt a familiar thrill. The Keth'ari had built their empire by studying and reverse engineering the technologies of dead civilizations. Human tech was particularly valuable because so little of it had survived their extinction. Most human worlds had been scoured clean by time and other scavenger species, leaving behind only fragments and incomplete records. "Bring it aboard," he ordered. "Full quarantine protocols. I want to know what the humans thought was valuable enough to preserve." The retrieval took 6 hours. The preservation chamber was carefully extracted from the wreckage and transported to the harvester's main research bay, where it was placed in a sterile containment field. Chief Medical Officer Synth arrived shortly after, her tentacles already reaching for the scanning equipment she would need to analyze their find. "Fascinating," Synth murmured, as her instruments began their initial assessment. "The preservation system is unlike anything in our databases. It's not simple cryogenic suspension. The chamber appears to be maintaining cellular integrity through quantum field manipulation and temporal stasis." Captain Nexus watched through the observation window as his science team swarmed around the mysterious chamber. The Keth'ari were a methodical people, their approach to discovery governed by centuries of careful protocol. They had learned through bitter experience that alien technology could be as dangerous as it was valuable. "Can you determine what's inside?" Nexus asked. Since sensors probed deeper into the chamber's contents, "It appears to be a single humanoid organism, Captain. Male. Based on the physiological markers, the preservation readings indicate he's been in stasis for 408 years. The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of the ship's systems. 400 years was longer than most Keth'ari lived. This human had been placed in stasis shortly before his entire species vanished from the galaxy. "Are there any signs of degradation?" Nexus inquired. "None whatsoever. In fact, the cellular activity suggests the preservation process has actually improved his biological functions. His muscle density is 30% higher than baseline human norms. His neural pathways show enhanced connectivity. It's as if the stasis didn't just preserve him, it refined him." Navigator Prism turned from her station. "Captain, should we contact the Science Council? A living human would be of immense value to xenobiological research." Nexus considered this. The Keth'ari Science Council would indeed be fascinated by such a discovery, but they would also want to take control of the specimen. As salvage captain, Nexus had rights to anything recovered in neutral space, but those rights became murky when dealing with sentient beings. Not yet, he decided. We'll conduct our own preliminary examination first. Synth, can the chamber's occupant be safely awakened? The medical officer consulted her readings. The stasis systems appear designed for eventual revival. All biological functions are stable and ready for reactivation. However, Captain, there are protocols we should consider. This being has been unconscious for 4 centuries. The psychological trauma of awakening to find his entire species extinct could be severe. We'll deal with that when it happens. Begin the revival process. Synth hesitated. Captain, I should point out that we know very little about human behavior. According to the historical records, they were a peaceful species that focused primarily on exploration and scientific advancement. They had no standing armies and few defensive capabilities, which may explain why they vanished so completely. All the more reason to proceed, Nexus replied. A peaceful being will be easier to manage and communicate with. The revival process began with a series of gradual temperature increases. The frost on the chamber's viewing panel slowly melted away, revealing the face within. The human male appeared to be in his early 30s by their species standards. His features were angular and weathered, with short-cropped dark hair and several small scars along his jawline. His body was lean but powerfully built, with the kind of muscle definition that suggested a life of physical activity. Interesting, Synth observed. His scarring patterns and muscle development don't match the profiles of the peaceful explorers described in our historical records. This individual appears to have seen significant physical conflict. Perhaps he was injured in whatever disaster befell his ship, Nexus suggested. As the chamber's systems continued their work, the human's vital signs began to strengthen. His heartbeat became more regular, his breathing deeper. Neural activity spiked as his brain began the complex process of returning to consciousness. Captain, Quantum called from his station, I've been analyzing the wreckage data. This ship wasn't destroyed by accident or system failure. The damage patterns suggest it was attacked by multiple vessels using high-energy weapons. Attacked by whom? Unknown, but the weapons signatures don't match any known technology from that time period. The attackers used directed plasma beams and kinetic projectiles far more advanced than anything humans possessed. This information cast the discovery in a new light. If the humans had been attacked by unknown enemies, then this sleeping figure might be more than just a curious relic. He might be a witness to his species' destruction. The chamber's final systems activated with a soft chime. Atmospheric processors began flooding the interior with breathable air, while neural stimulators gently coaxed the human's consciousness back to wakefulness. His eyes opened slowly, pupils dilating as they adjusted to the soft lighting of the research bay. For a moment he lay perfectly still, only his eyes moving as they tracked across the unfamiliar ceiling above him. Then, with fluid precision, he sat up. The movement was so smooth and controlled that it caught everyone by surprise. Most beings emerging from long-term stasis were disoriented and weak. This human moved as if he had simply been taking a short nap. "Status report," the human said, his voice clear and commanding, despite centuries of disuse. The words came through the universal translator with perfect clarity, but the tone and cadence suggested someone accustomed to giving orders. Synth approached the chamber cautiously, her medical scanners still recording data. "You are aboard the Keth'ari vessel Harvester," she said in what she hoped was a soothing tone. "You were recovered from a derelict ship in neutral space. You have been in stasis for 408 years. The human absorbed this information without visible reaction. His eyes moved methodically around the research bay, cataloging every detail with the precision of someone conducting a tactical assessment. When his gaze fell on Captain Nexus, there was a moment of mutual evaluation. "I am Captain Nexus of the Keth'ari Confederation," Nexus introduced himself. "May I ask your name?" "Marcus Chen, Colonel, Terran Defense Corps," the human replied, swinging his legs over the side of the chamber. As his feet touched the floor, there was a subtle vibration that seemed to travel through the deck plating. "What happened to my ship?" Synth quickly consulted her readings. The human's weight was registering as significantly higher than expected, despite his lean appearance. His bone density readings were off the charts, and his muscle fibers appeared to be packed with an efficiency she had never seen in any species. Your vessel was destroyed, Captain Nexus explained. We found you in the wreckage. You appear to be the only survivor. Marcus nodded slowly, showing no emotional response to this news. What happened to Earth? What happened to the Coalition? The question everyone had been dreading. Captain Nexus exchanged glances with his crew before responding carefully. I'm afraid the Terran Coalition no longer exists. According to our historical records, human civilization ended approximately 400 years ago. The exact cause is unknown, but your species appears to have vanished from the galaxy. For the first time, Marcus showed a reaction. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and his hands slowly clenched into fists. The metal examination table beside him began to show stress fractures where his fingers rested against its edge. Vanished, Marcus repeated, his voice flat. All of them? We have found no evidence of living human populations anywhere in known space, Synth confirmed gently. You may be the last of your kind. Marcus stood up slowly, his movements still displaying that same fluid control. As he rose to his full height, the Keth'ari crew instinctively took a step back. There was something about his presence that triggered ancient survival instincts, despite his calm demeanor. Colonel Chen, Captain Nexus said carefully, we understand this must be traumatic news. Our medical officer can provide psychological support if needed. Marcus turned his attention to Synth, studying her with those same calculating eyes. What do your records say about the end of human civilization? Synth consulted her database. The historical consensus is that humans were a peaceful, exploration-focused species that likely destroyed themselves through internal conflict or resource depletion. Your people were known for their scientific achievements but had limited military capabilities. Limited military capabilities, Marcus said, and for the first time he smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Is that what the records say? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Yes, that's correct. Humans were described as having no standing armies and few defensive systems. Most scholars believe this pacifist nature contributed to your species' extinction. Marcus walked to the observation window, his footsteps leaving small impressions in the reinforced deck plating. He looked out at the stars for a long moment before speaking again. What year did this extinction supposedly occur? According to multiple sources, the last confirmed human activity was recorded in the year 2387. Quantum replied from his station. Marcus was quiet for nearly a minute, his enhanced mind processing this information. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that made everyone in the room unconsciously lean forward. I was put into stasis in 2383. The implications of this statement rippled through the research bay. If Marcus had been placed in stasis 4 years before the supposed extinction, then he was potentially a witness to the events that led to humanity's disappearance. Colonel, Captain Nexus said carefully, can you tell us what was happening when you entered stasis? What were the circumstances? Marcus turned back to face them, and his expression had changed. The calm acceptance was gone, replaced by something harder and more dangerous. The circumstances, he said slowly, were that we were losing. Losing what? Synth asked. The war. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. According to every historical record the Keth'ari possessed, humans had been peaceful. They had no armies, no weapons, no enemies. The idea that they had been fighting a war was completely contrary to everything they thought they knew. What war? Captain Nexus demanded. Our records show no evidence of human military conflict. Marcus studied each of them carefully before responding. How familiar are you with human history? Not the sanitized version in your databases, but actual human history? We know what our archaeological teams have discovered, Navigator Prism replied. Peaceful settlements, research facilities, exploration vessels, nothing to suggest a military culture. That's because you've only seen the colonies, Marcus explained. The outer settlements where families lived and worked. You never found the fortress worlds. Fortress worlds? Earth, Mars, Titan, Europa, and about 30 other heavily defended systems that formed the core of human space. The places where we kept our military infrastructure, our weapons development, our training facilities. Marcus paused, watching their reactions. The places where we kept our soldiers. Science Officer Quantum was frantically accessing the ship's databases. There's no record of any militarized human worlds. Every archaeological survey has shown peaceful settlements. Of course there's no record, Marcus said. We made sure of that. The research bay's atmosphere had grown noticeably tenser. Captain Nexus found himself reassessing the human standing before them. The scars, the muscle development, the way Marcus moved and spoke, it all suggested someone with extensive combat experience. "You're saying humans had a secret military?" Nexus asked. "Not secret, separate. The civilian populations on the colony worlds lived peaceful lives because we kept the war away from them. They could focus on science and exploration because we handled the fighting." "Fighting who?" Marcus's expression darkened. "The Devourers." The name meant nothing to any of the Keth'ari present, but the way Marcus said it suggested something terrible. "We've never encountered any species by that name," Synth said. "You wouldn't have. We made sure of that too." Marcus walked back to the examination table, his increased weight causing it to creak ominously. The Devourers were a machine intelligence from outside the galaxy. They consumed entire civilizations, stripping planets of all biological matter and converting it into more machines. "When did this war begin?" Captain Nexus asked, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know the answer. "First contact was in 2298. The war lasted 85 years. The numbers didn't add up. According to Keth'ari records, humans had been peaceful throughout that entire period. If they had been fighting an 85-year war against a machine intelligence, there should have been evidence." "That's impossible," Quantum protested. "We have surveillance data from that period, trade records, communication intercepts, archaeological evidence. There's no sign of any extended conflict." Marcus nodded slowly. "We were very good at keeping the war hidden. The civilian populations never knew how close we came to extinction. Multiple times. How could you hide a war for 85 years? Compartmentalization. The military operated independently from civilian society. Different command structures, different supply chains, different territories. We fought the Devourers in deep space, in dead systems, in regions where civilians never traveled." Synth was studying her medical readings with growing concern. "Colonel, your physiological readings are unlike anything in our databases. Your bone density, muscle efficiency, neural conductivity, they're all far beyond normal human parameters." "That would be the enhancement protocols," Marcus replied matter-of-factly. "Enhancement protocols?" By 2350, it became clear that baseline humans couldn't match the Devourers' capabilities. So we enhanced ourselves. Genetic modifications, cybernetic implants, biochemical optimization. We turned ourselves into living weapons. The research bay fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. The peaceful, exploration-focused humans of the historical records were being systematically replaced by the image of a militarized species that had fought a secret war for nearly a century. "What happened to the Devourers?" Captain Nexus asked. "We won," Marcus said simply. "It took everything we had, but we destroyed them. Every last machine, every factory ship, every production facility. We hunted them to extinction." "Then why did human civilization end?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his enhanced senses picking up subtle changes in the Keth'ari crew's body language. They were afraid now, he realized. The revelation that humans had been warriors, rather than peaceful explorers, was fundamentally altering their perception of him. "Because," he said finally, "the war changed us. By the time we defeated the Devourers, we weren't the same species that had first encountered them. We had become something else. Something designed for war." "What do you mean?" "I mean that after 85 years of genetic modification and cybernetic enhancement, after decades of psychological conditioning and combat stimulants, we had trouble remembering how to be peaceful. The implications were staggering. If Marcus was telling the truth, then human civilization hadn't been destroyed by external enemies or internal collapse. It had been transformed by war into something unrecognizable. The enhanced soldiers," Marcus continued, "we couldn't integrate back into civilian society. We were too different, too dangerous. So the government made a decision." "What decision?" "They put us in stasis, thousands of us, scattered across different ships and hidden facilities. The plan was to wake us up only if humanity faced another existential threat." Captain Nexus felt a chill run through his carapace. How many enhanced soldiers were put into stasis? I don't know the exact number. My clearance level only covered the tactical data for my sector, but based on the deployment patterns I was aware of, I'd estimate somewhere between 50 and 100,000. The number hit the research bay like a physical blow. 100,000 enhanced human soldiers, potentially scattered across the galaxy in hidden stasis chambers, waiting to be awakened. But that was over 400 years ago, Synth said weakly. Surely the stasis systems would have failed by now. Marcus gestured to the chamber he had emerged from. This one didn't, and human military engineering was designed to last. We built things to survive the end of civilization if necessary. Navigator Prism was running calculations at her station. Captain, if even a fraction of these stasis chambers are still functional, and if they're scattered across the galaxy as he suggests, then we may have just awakened something far more dangerous than we realize, Captain Nexus finished. Marcus had been watching their growing alarm with professional interest. You seem concerned. Why? Because, Captain Nexus said carefully, the galaxy has been at peace for centuries. The Keth'ari Confederation has maintained stability across dozens of star systems. The revelation that there might be thousands of enhanced human warriors hidden throughout space is troubling. Troubling for whom? The question was asked with such casual directness that it took everyone a moment to process the implications. Marcus wasn't asking about the philosophical implications of enhanced warriors in a peaceful galaxy. He was asking about the practical implications for the Keth'ari specifically. For everyone, Synth replied quickly. Enhanced warriors from a dead civilization awakening after centuries of stasis could cause significant social and political disruption. Marcus smiled again, and this time the expression was genuinely amused. Doctor, I appreciate your concern, but I think you may be misunderstanding the situation. What do you mean? I mean that enhanced human soldiers weren't just physically and mentally augmented. We were also equipped with tactical and strategic intelligence far beyond baseline human norms. Do you really think we wouldn't have contingency plans for exactly this scenario? The research bay had grown very quiet. Outside the observation windows, the stars seemed to shine a little less brightly. What scenario? Captain Nexus asked, though he was increasingly certain he didn't want to know the answer. Awakening after our civilization had been destroyed in a galaxy controlled by alien species. Marcus stood up, his presence now dominating the room despite being shorter than most of the Keth'ari present. Did you really think we would just accept that and try to peacefully integrate into your society? What else would you do? Marcus walked to the chamber's control panel and began examining the readouts with the practiced eye of someone who understood the technology intimately. Well, first I'd gather intelligence about the current political situation, learn who's in charge, how they maintain control, what their military capabilities are. And then? Then I'd begin the process of reclaiming human territory. The words were spoken with such casual certainty that it took a moment for their full meaning to sink in. Captain Nexus felt his respiratory system skip a beat. Reclaiming human territory. Colonel, you're one individual awakening after 4 centuries. Your entire species is extinct. How could you possibly reclaim anything? Marcus turned back to face them, and his expression had shifted once again. The amusement was gone, replaced by something colder and far more calculating. Captain, I think you're still operating under some fundamental misunderstandings about human military doctrine. Such as the assumption that we would put enhanced soldiers into stasis, without also providing them with the means to complete their mission once awakened. Science Officer Quantum was monitoring the ship's sensor arrays when his instruments detected something that made his blood turn cold. Captain, I'm reading energy signatures from the debris field. Multiple sources are powering up. Marcus nodded with satisfaction. The automated systems are finally responding to my awakening signal. What automated systems? The ones built into every military vessel to ensure mission continuity. When I was awakened, my enhanced neural implants automatically transmitted a coded signal. That signal is now activating every piece of dormant human military technology within a significant radius. Quote, Captain Nexus rushed to the sensor displays, his worst fears being confirmed by the data streaming across the screens. Throughout the debris field, pieces of wreckage that had appeared dead for centuries were suddenly showing signs of activity. Power cores were coming online. Communication arrays were extending and weapons systems were running diagnostics. How is this possible? Human military engineering principle number 1, Marcus explained calmly. Never deploy a weapon without ensuring it can complete its mission, even under worst-case scenarios. Every ship, every outpost, every piece of equipment was designed with autonomous capabilities. But the technology is 400 years old, and it was built to last 1,000. Marcus was studying the sensor readings with obvious satisfaction. Looks like about 60% of the local systems are still functional. Not bad, considering. Navigator Prism's voice was shaking as she read from her instruments. Captain, I'm detecting weapons platforms coming online throughout the debris field. Energy signatures are climbing rapidly. What do you want? Captain Nexus demanded, turning back to Marcus. What I want is simple, Captain. I want to know what happened to my people. I want to know who was responsible for the destruction of human civilization, and I want to make sure it never happens again. But human civilization ended 400 years ago. Whatever happened, whoever was responsible, they're long dead. Marcus shook his head slowly. Captain, you're still not thinking like a soldier. When we went into stasis, we left behind very specific instructions for our automated systems. Those systems have been monitoring galactic communications for 4 centuries, gathering intelligence, tracking political developments. What kind of instructions? To identify and eliminate any species that posed a threat to humanity's eventual return. The research bay's emergency lighting suddenly activated, bathing everything in harsh red illumination. Throughout the ship, alarms began sounding as the Harvester's defensive systems detected the massive weapons arrays powering up around them. Colonel, Captain Nexus said carefully, surely you can see that awakening ancient weapons systems in populated space would cause tremendous casualties. Innocent beings would die. Innocent? Marcus's enhanced hearing had detected the subtle changes in the Keth'ari crew's breathing patterns, the slight shifts in their posture that indicated fight-or-flight responses. Captain, how exactly did the Keth'ari Confederation acquire the territories that once belonged to humanity? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Captain Nexus found himself unable to meet Marcus's steady gaze. The human territories were unclaimed when we expanded into this region, he said weakly. Unclaimed because humanity was extinct. And how did humanity become extinct, Captain? We don't know. The historical records are incomplete. Marcus's smile returned, but now it carried no warmth at all. Actually, Captain, the records are quite complete. They're just classified at levels your civilization has never achieved. Science Officer Quantum looked up from his instruments with naked terror in his eyes. Captain, the automated systems are accessing our ship's databases. They're downloading everything. 400 years of monitoring, Marcus continued conversationally, have provided a very complete picture of what happened after we went into stasis. The automated systems have been recording everything, waiting for one of us to wake up and review the data. What did they record? They recorded the Keth'ari expansion into human space. They recorded your archaeological teams dismantling human settlements for scrap metal. They recorded your historians declaring humanity a failed species that deserved extinction. Captain Nexus felt the weight of centuries pressing down on him. We didn't know. We thought you were already extinct when we arrived. And now you know better. Marcus walked to the observation window again, looking out at the debris field where ancient weapons were awakening after centuries of sleep. The question is, what are you going to do with that knowledge? What do you want us to do? I want you to send a message to your government. Tell them that humanity has returned. Tell them that we remember what was taken from us. And tell them that they have exactly 72 hours to begin withdrawal from all territories that once belonged to the Terran Coalition. And if we refuse? Marcus turned back to face them one final time, and in his eyes they saw the accumulated fury of a species that had fought for its survival across nearly a century of war, only to wake up and find their civilization erased from history. Then, Captain, you'll discover why we were so effective against the Devourers. Outside the observation windows, the first of the ancient weapons platforms had completed its startup sequence. Its targeting systems swiveled toward the Harvester, with mechanical precision, energy building in weapons that had been designed to destroy machines capable of consuming entire worlds. Marcus Chen, the last awakened warrior of humanity, stood in the research bay of an alien ship and prepared to reclaim a galaxy that had forgotten his people ever existed. The age of Keth'ari expansion was about to end. The age of human reckoning was about to begin. The emergency session of the Keth'ari High Council convened within hours of receiving Captain Nexus's transmission. The massive crystalline chamber beneath the surface of Keth Prime had not seen such urgency in over 2 centuries. Council Prime Vortex, ancient beyond measure even by Keth'ari standards, presided over the gathering with growing alarm as the reports filtered in from across their territory. 17 more awakening sites confirmed in the last 6 hours, reported Intelligence Director Flux, her normally steady voice betraying hints of panic. Each activation is triggering dormant systems we never knew existed. Weapons platforms, automated factories, communication networks that have been hidden for 4 centuries. Military Commander Apex stood before the holographic displays, showing the expanding crisis. Red markers indicated active human installations across what had been considered secure Keth'ari space. Each new activation revealed the staggering scope of humanity's hidden military infrastructure. The human called Marcus Chen was correct about our historical records, Apex admitted reluctantly. We found only civilian settlements because that's all they wanted us to find. The military installations were concealed using technology we still don't understand. Council Prime Vortex studied the tactical displays with the wisdom of someone who had lived through the rise of the Keth'ari Confederation. How many enhanced humans have awakened so far? 43 confirmed, with more awakening every hour. Each one appears to possess the same enhanced capabilities as the original subject. Increased strength, speed, intelligence, and most concerning of all, complete tactical knowledge of our defenses. The revelation that their supposedly impregnable territories were riddled with hidden human installations had shattered the confidence of the High Council. For generations, they had believed themselves the inheritors of a galaxy cleansed of dangerous species. Now they were discovering that the most dangerous species of all had simply been sleeping. "What are their demands?" Vortex asked. Director Flux consulted her reports. Complete withdrawal from all former human territories within 72 hours. Reparations for what they term the theft of human resources. And most troubling, the establishment of a new galactic order with humanity in a dominant position. Impossible. We cannot simply abandon colonies that have existed for centuries. With respect, Council Prime, we may not have a choice. Our military analysts have completed their assessment of the awakening installations. The weapon systems alone could sterilize our core worlds. The weight of this statement settled over the chamber like a suffocating blanket. The Keth'ari had built their empire through careful expansion into territories left vacant by extinct civilizations. They had never faced a military threat from a technologically advanced species, particularly one that seemed to have been specifically designed for warfare. "There must be something we can do," insisted Economic Coordinator Spiral. "Surely negotiation is possible. These humans have been asleep for 4 centuries. They cannot possibly understand the complexity of current galactic politics." Intelligence Director Flux activated a new holographic display. "I'm afraid they understand perfectly, Coordinator. The automated systems Marcus Chen mentioned have been conducting surveillance of our entire civilization since we first entered human space. They know our population centers, our resource dependencies, our military capabilities, even our psychological profiles." The display showed a vast network of intelligence-gathering operations that had been invisible to Keth'ari sensors for centuries. Tiny monitoring stations hidden in asteroid fields, surveillance satellites disguised as space debris, even infiltration devices that had been recording conversations in government facilities. "They know everything about us," Flux continued grimly. "Our strengths, our weaknesses, our fears. We have been completely transparent to them while remaining utterly ignorant of their existence. Council Prime Vortex felt the full weight of his centuries pressing down upon him. Show me the military assessment. Military Commander Apex activated the tactical displays with obvious reluctance. The human installations we've detected so far include weapons platforms capable of cracking planets, automated factory ships that can construct entire fleets, and defense networks that make our most secure facilities look primitive. How is this possible? How could we have missed such massive installations? Because they were built to be missed, Council Prime. Human military doctrine appears to have been based on deception and misdirection. They created an entirely false historical record while hiding their true capabilities. The tactical displays showed the locations of awakening installations across Keth'ari space. Each red marker represented a potential threat that could devastate nearby colonies. The pattern of their placement revealed a strategic mind that had planned for this exact scenario centuries in advance. They're not randomly distributed, Apex observed. Each installation is positioned to control vital hyperspace routes and resource centers. It's as if they anticipated our expansion patterns before we even began. Director Flux nodded grimly. The surveillance data suggests they did exactly that. The automated systems have been modeling our civilization's development for 400 years, predicting our growth patterns and strategic vulnerabilities. The implications were staggering. Not only had humanity survived their apparent extinction, they had spent centuries preparing for their return. Every move the Keth'ari had made, every colony they had established, every strategic decision they had implemented, had been observed and analyzed by an intelligence network they never knew existed. What about their numbers? Vortex asked. Surely 43 enhanced soldiers cannot threaten our entire civilization. The awakening process is accelerating, Council Prime. Our latest estimates suggest there may be as many as 50,000 stasis chambers scattered throughout the galaxy. If even half are still functional, we could be facing an army of enhanced warriors within weeks. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of the crisis became clear. An advanced species of enhanced warriors, armed with technology centuries ahead of anything the Keth'ari possessed, was awakening throughout their territory with detailed knowledge of every weakness in their defenses. There's something else, Apex added reluctantly. The humans who have awakened so far are not behaving like refugees or survivors. They're behaving like an occupying force that has finally decided to reveal itself. What do you mean? They're not asking for asylum or assistance. They're issuing demands, backed by overwhelming force. They're treating our entire civilization as an illegal occupation of their territory. Council Prime Vortex studied the displays for a long moment, his ancient mind processing scenarios and possibilities. What would happen if we attempted to negotiate a compromise? Perhaps we could offer them a portion of the disputed territories. Intelligence Director Flux shook her head. I don't believe they're interested in compromise, Council Prime. The surveillance data shows they've been planning this moment for centuries. This isn't a spontaneous response to awakening in an alien galaxy. This is the execution of a plan that was set in motion before they went into stasis. Then what do they ultimately want? Based on their demands and behavioral patterns, they want exactly what they've stated: complete restoration of human dominance in this region of the galaxy. The weight of 4 centuries of expansion and development hung in the balance. Billions of Keth'ari citizens living on worlds that had been peacefully colonized were now being claimed by a species they had believed extinct. Council Prime, Military Commander Apex said quietly. I must also report that our fleet commanders are requesting permission to launch preemptive strikes against the awakening installations. What is your assessment of such action? Apex consulted his tactical displays with obvious reluctance. Military Disaster, Council Prime. Our weapons are designed for conquering peaceful species and maintaining order among civilian populations. Human military technology appears to have been designed for fighting wars against opponents with comparable capabilities. Are you saying we cannot defend ourselves? I'm saying that any military action against the humans would likely result in the complete destruction of our forces and massive civilian casualties. The reality of their situation was becoming undeniably clear. The Keth'ari Confederation, built on the foundation of easy conquests and peaceful expansion, was facing an opponent that had been specifically designed to fight and win wars against advanced civilizations. There's one more factor we must consider, Director Flux added. The human installations are not just defensive. They're also beginning to construct new vessels and equipment. The automated factories are producing ships using technology we don't recognize. What kind of ships? Warships, Council Prime. Vessels designed specifically for space combat. Our analysts estimate that within 30 days, the humans will have a fleet capable of challenging our entire navy. The implications were staggering. Not only were the humans awakening with superior technology and detailed intelligence about Keth'ari weaknesses, they were also actively building the forces necessary to enforce their demands. How did our ancestors miss this? Economic Coordinator Spiral asked in disbelief. How could an entire species vanish and leave behind such extensive hidden infrastructure? Because they didn't vanish, Director Flux replied. They went into planned hibernation after ensuring their automated systems could maintain their technology and monitor the galaxy in their absence. What we interpreted as extinction was actually strategic withdrawal. Council Prime Vortex finally spoke after a long period of contemplation. Contact the human called Marcus Chen. Arrange a direct communication link. If we are to face the end of our civilization, I would know why. The communication was established within hours. The quantum entanglement transmitters linking the High Council chamber with the research station where Marcus Chen waited. His image appeared as a hologram in the center of the crystalline chamber, and despite being vastly outnumbered by the council members, his presence dominated the space. Council Prime Vortex, Marcus said with a slight nod of acknowledgement. I understand you wish to discuss terms. I wish to understand why you are destroying a civilization that has existed peacefully for centuries. Marcus's expression remained calm and controlled. Council Prime, your civilization has existed by occupying territories that belong to another species. That is not peace. That is colonization built on assumed genocide. We believed your people were extinct. We found no evidence of living humans anywhere in the galaxy. You found no evidence because we didn't want you to find evidence. Every human installation you discovered was one we allowed you to discover. Every record you found was one we left for you to find. The casual revelation that human civilization had been manipulating Keth'ari perceptions for centuries sent ripples of shock through the council chamber. Why? Vortex demanded. Why deceive us? Why not reveal yourselves when we first entered your space? Because we were tired, Council Prime. We had just finished fighting an 85-year war against an enemy that could have destroyed all organic life in the galaxy. We needed time to recover, to decide what kind of species we wanted to be after such a conflict. Marcus paused, studying the assembled council members with eyes that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. We made a mistake, he continued. We assumed that any species advanced enough to achieve interstellar travel would be wise enough to avoid claiming territory that obviously belonged to someone else. But you were gone. Your worlds were empty. Our civilian worlds were empty because we evacuated them. Our military worlds were hidden, because that's what military worlds are supposed to be. The mistake was ours for assuming you would recognize the difference. Intelligence Director Flux leaned forward. Marcus Chen, our records show no evidence of this evacuation. No refugee fleets, no distress signals, no requests for assistance. Because we didn't need assistance, we had planned for the possibility that the war against the Devourers might force us to abandon our territories temporarily. Every civilian population was evacuated to hidden colonies and distant systems. Every military asset was concealed or placed in stasis. Where are these hidden colonies? Marcus smiled, and the expression was genuinely amused. Director, surely you don't expect me to reveal the locations of our civilian populations to a military intelligence officer of an occupying force. The casual dismissal of the entire Keth'ari Confederation as an occupying force highlighted the fundamental difference in how the two species viewed the situation. Council Prime, Marcus continued, you seem to be operating under the assumption that this is a negotiation between equals. I need to clarify something for you. What? This is not a negotiation, this is an ultimatum. You have occupied human territory for 4 centuries. You have dismantled our settlements, exploited our resources, and declared our civilization extinct. Now we are awake, and we want our territory back. Military Commander Apex activated his tactical displays. Marcus Chen, You cannot seriously expect us to abandon worlds where billions of our people have lived for generations. Commander, I expect you to abandon worlds that never belonged to you in the first place. But our people were born there. They have no other home. Then they can apply for residency permits under the restored human government. Some applications may be approved. The casual dismissal of billions of Keth'ari citizens as potential permit applicants in their own homes drove home the complete reversal of power that was taking place. This is madness, Economic Coordinator Spiral protested. You cannot simply reclaim an entire region of space after 4 centuries. Coordinator, we never relinquished claim to our territory. We simply allowed you to use it temporarily, while we dealt with a more pressing threat. Council Prime Vortex felt the weight of inevitable defeat settling over him. What happens to our people if we comply with your demands? Those who wish to remain in human space may apply for citizenship or residency status. Those who prefer to leave will be provided with transportation to unclaimed territories. No one will be harmed unnecessarily. And if we refuse, Marcus's expression grew cold. Then you will discover why human military technology was effective against an enemy that had already consumed dozens of advanced civilizations. The threat was delivered with such calm certainty that it carried more weight than any passionate declaration of war might have. How do we know you won't simply destroy us once we surrender? Director Flux asked. Because, Director, humans are not interested in genocide, we're interested in justice. Your people committed no crime beyond taking advantage of what they believed was an abandoned region of space. The crime was in refusing to investigate further when evidence suggested otherwise. What evidence? The perfectly preserved infrastructure. The fact that our worlds showed signs of organized evacuation, rather than catastrophic destruction. The reality that our technology was far too advanced to have been developed by a species that simply destroyed itself. The list of overlooked clues highlighted the systematic failure of Keth'ari archaeologists and historians to question their assumptions about human extinction. But even if we had investigated further, Vortex protested, we found no way to contact your people, because we were not ready to be contacted. The automated systems had standing orders to maintain concealment until enough enhanced humans awakened to ensure our security. How many of you are awake now? Marcus consulted what appeared to be a mental display, his enhanced neural implants accessing data streams invisible to the Keth'ari. As of this moment, 237 enhanced soldiers have completed awakening protocols. By tomorrow, that number will exceed 500. The rapid acceleration of awakenings was clearly part of a carefully orchestrated plan. Council Prime, Marcus continued, I want you to understand something important. We are not monsters. We are not interested in causing unnecessary suffering. But we are also not willing to negotiate away our right to exist in our own territory. What are you proposing? Orderly transition. Your government announces that new archaeological evidence has revealed that human territory was occupied rather than abandoned. You begin withdrawal proceedings while we establish transitional governments. The process could take years, but it would be peaceful. And if elements of our population resist, then they will be dealt with according to human military doctrine. Marcus paused. I should mention that human military doctrine was developed during a war against an enemy that showed no mercy to civilian populations. We learned to be very effective at suppressing resistance movements. The implication was clear. Peaceful cooperation would be met with reasonable treatment. Violent resistance would be met with overwhelming force. How long do we have to decide? Vortex asked. Your 72 hours began when I delivered the initial ultimatum. You now have approximately 36 hours remaining. And if we need more time? Council Prime, we've given you 4 centuries. We feel that's sufficient time to prepare for our return. The communication ended, leaving the High Council chamber in stunned silence. The representatives of a civilization that had ruled the galaxy for generations were being given a day and a half to decide whether to surrender their empire or face military annihilation. What are our options? Vortex asked finally. Military Commander Apex consulted his displays one final time. Surrender, Council Prime? That's our only viable option. Explain. Our military exists to maintain order among peaceful populations and defend against pirates and raiders. The humans have spent centuries building technology specifically designed to fight wars against advanced civilizations. We cannot compete, Intelligence Director Flux nodded grimly. The awakening process is accelerating beyond our worst projections. We're detecting new activations every few minutes. Within days, they'll have more enhanced soldiers awake than we have military personnel in our entire navy. Then we have no choice. There is one alternative, Economic Coordinator Spiral said quietly. What? We could attempt to evacuate our populations to territories outside the former human sphere. Billions of beings cannot be evacuated in 36 hours. Then we make the announcement and begin the process. If the humans are truly interested in justice rather than revenge, they might be willing to extend the timeline for an orderly withdrawal. Council Prime Vortex considered this option. It would mean the end of the Keth'ari Confederation as they had known it, but it might preserve their civilization. Very well. Draft the announcement. Inform our people that new evidence has revealed the true nature of the human territories and that we are beginning withdrawal procedures. What about the enhanced humans who are still awakening? We hope they prove to be as reasonable as Marcus Chen, because if they're not, our civilization is about to discover what it means to face an enemy designed specifically for war. The announcement was broadcast across Keth'ari space 6 hours later. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. Panic buying emptied stores across dozens of worlds. Riots broke out in major population centers. Some military commanders declared their intention to fight regardless of government orders. But the most significant reaction came from the awakening human installations. As each enhanced soldier completed their revival process, they immediately began coordinating with their fellows to establish control over strategic locations throughout the former human sphere. The orderly transition that Marcus Chen had proposed quickly became a race against time, as both civilizations struggled to manage the rapid shift in galactic power. Some Keth'ari colonies began evacuation procedures immediately. Others declared independence and attempted to establish defensive positions. The humans responded with surgical precision. Military installations that showed signs of resistance were disabled within hours. Civilian populations that cooperated with transition procedures were left unmolested. The message was clear. Compliance would be rewarded. Resistance would be crushed. Within 2 weeks, the basic structure of the new reality had been established. Human control over their former territories was absolute and undeniable. The Keth'ari Confederation ceased to exist as a galactic power, reduced to a collection of refugee populations seeking new homes in unclaimed regions of space. Marcus Chen, now serving as coordinator for the human awakening process, stood in the command center of a newly activated orbital station above what had once been called Keth Prime. The planet below was being peacefully evacuated. Its population offered transportation to territories outside the human sphere. Status report, he requested from the enhanced soldier serving as his tactical officer. 17,000 enhanced personnel, now active across all sectors, came the reply. Civilian awakening programs have begun in the hidden colonies. Estimated population recovery will reach baseline levels within 50 years. Resistance? Minimal and decreasing. Most remaining Keth'ari forces have accepted the transition. The few holdouts are being dealt with through standard suppression protocols. Marcus nodded, studying the displays that showed the restored human territory. After 4 centuries of sleep, his people had reclaimed their place in the galaxy. The civilian populations were emerging from their hidden colonies, ready to rebuild the worlds that had been abandoned to war. Sir, the tactical officer continued, we're receiving communications from several other species requesting diplomatic contact. It appears news of our return has spread throughout the galaxy. What's the nature of these communications? Requests for trade agreements, non-aggression pacts, and in several cases, offers of alliance against other species they consider threatening. Marcus smiled. The galaxy was adjusting to the new reality with typical speed. Species that had lived in peace for centuries were suddenly remembering that the universe could be a dangerous place. Draft a standard response. We're willing to engage in diplomatic relations with any species that respects human territorial claims and demonstrates no hostile intent toward our people. And if we encounter species that do demonstrate hostile intent, then they'll discover why we were so effective against the Devourers. The enhanced soldiers in the command center exchanged glances. They had awakened to find their civilization erased from history and their territory occupied by aliens. But they had also awakened with technology, knowledge, and capabilities that made them the dominant force in the galaxy. Humanity had returned to the stars not as refugees or survivors, but as the inheritors of a legacy forged in the crucible of an 85-year war against extinction. They had been sleeping, but they had never stopped preparing. The age of easy conquest was over. The age of human supremacy had begun. And somewhere in the depths of space, in hidden installations scattered across dozens of star systems, more stasis chambers were powering up, more enhanced soldiers were awakening, and more automated factories were building the ships and weapons necessary to ensure that humanity would never again face extinction. The galaxy had forgotten about the humans for 4 centuries. The humans, however, had never forgotten about the galaxy. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.